Hey Hockey Nuts, Wayne here. Coming at you tonight with the long-awaited NHL trade deadline day. Full analysis of all the trades that have happened since the last time I put up a video. If you remember, if you're going back on the channel, you'll find that I had been doing videos up until the 24th. And then I put out a quick message, both in those videos and in a short little video talking about an update to the channel, that I'd be working for an 8-day straight period, which included, unfortunately, trade deadline day and trade deadline week. And these aren't normal little short shifts. These are full 8, 9, 10-hour shifts each and every day. So it's been a long week. I've been working on the full analysis of trade deadline day, and I've got it here tonight. As I record this, it is Thursday night on the 1st of March. I know it's been a few days since we've done deadline day, but I think the wait will be worth it, and I've got some screen slides to show you. So, and of course in the background here I've got my whiteboard, which right now just has the current standings as of March 5th. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into this. I'm going to go ahead and switch my view to one that includes my computer monitor. All right, there we are. And here we are on the first page, and this is actually a PowerPoint slide presentation. So if you're familiar with PowerPoint, this will seem familiar to you, but I tried to make things look a little bit nice for this presentation. So let's go ahead and get into it. So this is talking about trade deadline day. This is February 25th and 26th of 2018. And as you can see, you'll see me down here in the corner. So if I have to make any funny faces, you'll be able to see those. So, all right, let's get into this. All right, so start with where have I been the last several days, because obviously a lot of the other hockey channels out there, we're doing not only live streams, but we're doing their trade analysis right after these trades went through. And it's been a busy week for me, so in my regular life. So as I explained, I last posted a video on the 24th. Since then, I worked 10 hours each day, and then on Sunday, I refereed 3 hockey games. So I was gone from my house on Sunday from 6 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. that day. And Monday wasn't much better. I had to work 9 hours Monday and then back to the rink after work. But on Mondays, I play. And of course, you know, when you play, you got to stick around, talk to the guys after the game, so on, so on. So again, I was gone from early in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. So Sunday and Monday, I didn't see much of my house at all. And then Tuesday, we had our monthly inventory at work, so I didn't get much time on that. That's another long day. And then Wednesday night, I worked on getting this thing put together, as well as finishing it a little bit on Thursday, which is today. And I also had to do my podcast show notes, because on Fridays we record our weekly podcast, which is what really got this channel started. So the podcast is still our flagship, I guess, program, if you will, on this channel, and we will be live streaming that, but more details on that to come. Anyway, all right, so let's first take a look at the trades that happened on February 25th. There were 5 trades that went down that day involving all of these teams: Rangers, Bruins, Canadiens, Blue Jackets, Sharks, Oilers, Nashville Predators, and Toronto Maple Leafs. And I apologize if I'm a little slow tonight. I'm just a wee bit tired. Anyway, let's start with the first trade. And this was a big one. This was the Rick Nash trade. And most of these are in chronological order. There might be some that are a little out of order, but for the most part, they're in chronological order. And Sunday got started with the Rick Nash trade. And of course, the Bruins got Rick Nash. The Rangers got forward Ryan Spooner, defenseman Ryan Lindgren, forward Matt Beleskey, 2018 first-round pick, a 2019 seventh-round pick. And, of course, Matt Beleskey, 50% of his salary is retained by the Bruins. And Rick Nash, 50% of his salary is retained by the Rangers. All right, so here's some details on Rick Nash. Obviously, a seasoned veteran, former first overall draft pick in the 2002 entry draft. He's a big guy, 6'4", 211. He won the Rocket Richard Trophy in 23-04 with 41 goals in 80 games. His salary this past season is $3.9 million, and he will be an unrestricted free agent on July 1st, barring the Bruins signing him. All right, Ryan Spooner is the player going the other way, or one of the players going the other way for the Rangers. His salary was just under $3 million this year. He'll be a restricted free agent on July 1st. He's a bit smallish of a player, good skater. He's got some good speed, good passing ability. One of the knocks on him in Boston, obviously he was a target of trade rumors for a long, long time with the Bruins, for probably the better part of 2 seasons. One of the knocks on him is that he lacks a finishing touch, or he doesn't finish, and Bruins are looking for a player that can finish, and obviously Rick Nash is going to fit that bill quite nicely for them, as evidence to, he's already scored a couple goals for Boston in the couple of games that he's played since coming over. But and of course Ryan Spooner is already off to a good start with the Rangers. He's played 1 game with them, had 2 assists, and the second assist was a nice pass across the open, across the front of the net. For the game winner the other night. I can't remember who they played, but anyway, I saw the highlights of that play. It's a very nice play for Spooner. It was an overtime assist. All right, one of the other players. This guy here is probably the one player that I was disappointed as a Bruins fan, the Bruins losing, in that he has the potential of being a very good player in the future for the Rangers. He's an unsigned prospect. It's Ryan Lindgren, of course. Currently playing at the University of Minnesota, and he played his high school hockey at the famed Shattuck St. Mary's, the same place that Sidney Crosby got his started back in the day. But of course, he played for the USA National Development Program, went on to play at the University of Minnesota. Only lasted 2 years, or he's in his second year actually at the University of Minnesota. And it doesn't look like he's going to be leaving there anytime too soon, but he definitely has the potential to be a very, very good player in the future. And, of course, the Bruins have a big, a very nice group of prospects for which to choose from. So he'll probably get a better shot with the Rangers anyway. But he was a second-round draft pick in the 2016 entry draft, and this is probably one of the better pickups long-term for the Rangers in this draft. And then, of course, Matt Beleskey, I'm calling this a throw-in player. He's currently playing in the American Hockey League. He signed with the Bruins back in the 2015-16 season, or at the beginning of that season, after playing several seasons for the Anaheim Ducks. Had some good years there. He scored 22 goals with the Ducks in his last season there. And then the Bruins signed him based on that season and probably overpaid for him. His salary is $3.8 million per year at the NHL level. He still has 2 more years remaining on this. So the Bruins are eating quite a bit of contract here, whereas the part of the Rangers that the Rangers are eating of Rick Nash is really only for the remainder of this season. So the Bruins are on the hook for quite a bit of money down the road. But this is a contract that the Bruins have been trying to get rid of for quite some time. And it was very nice of the Rangers to take this one on because, he doesn't appear to have any kind of future for the Bruins anyway. Well, it remains to see if the Rangers will decide to try him at the NHL level or not. But for now, he'll be playing in the AHL for the Hartford Wolfpack, and it looks like he's already played 1 game with them, as evidenced by his Hockey DB stats here. Okay. Now, as far as looking at it from both teams' perspective, obviously the trade made it very clear that the Bruins are all in for this season and are going to make a run for the Stanley Cup this season instead of being patient and waiting until the team is ripe for the picking, so to speak. I know Don Sweeney's been preaching patience, patience, patience to the fans for several seasons now, but this trade obviously tips his hand that he is going to go for the Stanley Cup at this point in time. So what Rick Nash gets them is it gets the Bruins much needed help on the right wing. They've been a little short on the right wing, and Nash is expected to play on the second line with Krejci and Jake DeBrusk, but that has kind of been thrown into a mess thanks to Patrice Bergeron's injury. So right now they're kind of jumbling the lineups a little bit here until Bergeron comes back. But when everybody is healthy, there was an expectation that Nash would be playing with Krejci and Jake DeBrusk on a line. So we'll see if that remains the case in the future. Another key for the Bruins is they get rid of a very bad contract in Beleskey, or at least half of a contract. And then it's on the Rangers' behalf, the Rangers get some value for a player that they may otherwise lose in free agency. And they did get quite a bit in return. Spooner can help the lineup right away, while Lindgren is a good prospect for 2 to 4 years down the road. Rangers also get a late first-round pick in the 2018 draft, which is expected to be a deep draft. So Bruins gave up quite a bit here. There's a lot. I was following the Bruins blogs and their Twitter feed, so to speak. There's a lot of Bruins fans that are not happy with this trade. They think that the Bruins gave up way too much to get Nash. But you got to think of it in these terms. This wasn't just a trade to get a player from the Rangers, as in Nash. Some of this stuff that was given up to the Rangers was also part of getting rid of Beleskey. That's going to cost money too, getting rid of the Beleskey contract. So not only they're getting a player that they can use this year, they're getting rid of a bad player at the same time. You put those two together, that makes the price go up. So therein lies the fact that you're getting rid of Spooner, which Bruins fans wanted him gone anyway. So why are they crying now as far as what they're giving up? I don't know. That first-round pick, and then, of course, Lindgren, which is a pretty decent prospect. All in all, I think it's a good trade for both teams long-term. It's better for the Rangers. Short-term, it's better for the Bruins. But the overall grand scheme of things, I think it's a pretty even trade. Obviously, let me know what your thoughts are on this trade down in the comments, and I'll be happy to discuss it with you. So let's move on to the next one because we got a long ways to go. All right, trade number 2. Montreal Canadiens got Kirby Reichel and Rinat Valiev and a 2018 second-round pick. Toronto gets Tomas Plekanec and Kyle Baun, and 50% of that salary on the Plekanec contract is retained by Montreal. All right, let's look at the individual players. Plekanec obviously is a seasoned veteran, played all of his career with Montreal, 232 career goals in almost 1,000 games. He is scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent on July 1. He has a $6 million salary this season. So in this case, Toronto is basically getting a pure rental because there has been press in and around Montreal saying that Plekanec is very interested in coming back to Montreal next fall if they will have him. So he may only be a Leaf for a couple of months and then go right back to Montreal because obviously he has roots there, wife, family, etc. He was quite happy in Montreal. So we'll see what happens this summer. But for now, Plekanec is now a Leaf for their playoff run. Kyle Baun, who's also the other player going to Montreal, he is an unrestricted free agent on July 1 as well. He's a Group 6 unrestricted free agent, which is basically your bottom tier players. He's currently playing the NHL, not expected to make the leap to the NHL, especially with a team as deep as Toronto. This is just simply a throw-in player at this point. Kirby Reichel is a former first-round draft pick, number 19 overall back in 2013. He's in his final year of his entry-level contract, which means he'll be a restricted free agent on July 1st. He's currently playing in the American Hockey League. He was projected to be a pretty good player, but for some reason, his career has stalled a little bit. So maybe a change of scenery for him. Although this will be his third team because he did play in the Blue Jackets system for a while, playing 37 games with them. It'll be interesting to see if he can rekindle his career in Montreal, because he didn't seem to be able to do it in Toronto. Although he played his whole time in the Toronto system, he did play with the Marlies. But he put up some pretty good numbers there. 52 points in 73 games last year, 30 points in 55 games this year. Which is not too bad. You think a number one overall draft pick, though, would do better than that, and would at least crack the NHL lineup here. It's been this is year 5 for him, and next year will be year 6. So it's kind of put up or shut up time for him at this point in his career. So I would expect that when he resigns this summer, he will sign at a much more cap-friendly rate than what you would expect a first-round draft pick to get. So we'll see what Montreal does with him this summer. And the other player going to Montreal, Rinat Valiev, is another player. He's in his final year of his entry-level deal. He can become a restricted free agent on July 1st. He's also currently playing in the AHL, and he's a defenseman. Montreal is very light on defensemen over the past couple of seasons. They've pretty much sold the farm on defensemen, so now they're finding themselves having to rebuild their farm system and their NHL team with defensemen. So he will definitely get an opportunity to show what he can do for Montreal, and for now, he'll be playing in the American Hockey League, but we'll see if he gets a shot at the big club in the fall, depending on how he does. So the goals for both teams in this trade, obviously this trade bolsters Toronto's NHL roster for their playoff run by adding a pure rental, which is the Planets, of course, with some skill to their bottom 6. Buchanan's adds a top 6 caliber forward with playoff experience to a roster that is short on playoff experience, and that is, of course, relative to other teams in the Atlantic Division. Reichel gets a chance to jumpstart his career in a new city. Montreal gets an extra pick in the upcoming 2018 draft, which once again is expected to be a very deep draft. Buchanan's reportedly also wants to return to Montreal next season, which I already touched on. So if he does, in fact, re-sign with the Canadiens in the summer, this whole trade will end up being a huge win for Montreal, because not only they're getting the 2 prospects and a pick, but they'll get Buchanan's back. So, and all they'll end up losing is Kyle Bond, and he'll be an unrestricted free agent anyway, so he's not really a valuable piece in that sense. All right, let's move on to the next trade. Edmonton Oilers get Pontus Aberg. Nashville Predators get Mark Letestu. Straight up player for player. But then, of course, Nashville later flips Letestu to Columbus, and we'll get to that trade in a minute. And, of course, this is Mark Letestu's details. He's in his final year of a 3-year, $5.4 million contract. He can become an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. He was flipped to Columbus later that day for a 2018 4th-round pick, and he scored a goal in his Columbus debut. So Letestu was a Predator for just a few hours, but certainly not long enough to be able to play with them, but he is now off to Columbus. So let's take a look at this. Aberg is a prospect that the Edmonton picked up in this trade. He He has a year remaining on his 2-year, $1.3 million contract. So this is not a rental, obviously. He'll join the Oilers and not their AHL team, at least as of right now. But he is yet to play that I'm aware of. I know the Oilers are playing tonight, and I haven't really been watching to see if he's played. But from what I understand, he was expected to make the Oilers right away, or at least be added to the Oilers for now. But time will tell. Obviously, Oilers fans, you could tell me if I'm wrong or right on that one. All right, so let's move on to the next trade. Here's the other half of the Letestu trade. This is where Letestu gets moved to Columbus, and Nashville gets a 4th-round pick in the 2018 NHL draft in return. So this is simply a pick for player, and of course we already looked at Letestu. Let me go back to him real quick, actually. Obviously, he's a seasoned veteran, so he'll be a nice extra player for Columbus to have on their roster as they make a push to make the playoffs this year. He'll probably fill a bottom 6 role with them. So basically, a guy that can grind it out, but at the same time he can put a few pucks in the net if the Columbus Blue Jackets need such. All right, the next trade number 5. Nashville Predators get goaltender Troy Grosenick and forward Brandon Bollig, and San Jose gets a 2018 6th-round pick. So obviously the players that the Sharks gave up, they don't think too highly of because it's only a 6th-round pick going to San Jose. And there really wasn't hardly, and I think this might have been the only goalie to change hands during trade deadline day. So, which I found kind of interesting that no goalies really moved at all. But anyway, here's the 2 players that Nashville gets. Let's take a look at them real quick. Both are pretty low-level players. Grosenick is a goaltender, of course. He's been playing with the San Jose Barracuda. He only has 2 career NHL games. Just a depth signing, really, for Nashville. And Grosenick will end up down in the minor leagues somewhere, probably with the Milwaukee Admirals, which is Nashville's farm team. And Bollig also will end up down in Milwaukee. He, too, has been playing in the American Hockey League the past couple of seasons. He has more NHL experience. As recently as 2015-16, he played for the Calgary Flames. But he not really known for putting up too much points. He's kind of he's a thug, I guess, or not so much a thug. Maybe that's a bad word. He's certainly an enforcer because the amount of penalty minutes he gets, very low on scoring. If he does make his way back up to the Nashville lineup at any point, and he probably would only do so in case of injury to some of the players on the Predators, I don't see him playing at all during their playoff run, but he's a player that they can call up if they need a pair of knuckles, I guess, so to speak. So that's pretty much what Nashville's getting in return. And then, of course, they're only getting a 6th-round draft pick. All right. Now, as far as other things going on February 25th, there were some signings, some straight-up signings that happened on February 25th. The Boston Bruins signed forward Brian Gionta to a 1-year, $700,000 contract. And the Anaheim Ducks signed forward Chris Kelly to a 1-year, $1.25 million contract. Nashville Predators also signed forward Mike Fisher to a 1-year, $1 million contract. So those were the 3 notable signings. There were other signings as well, but these 3 will probably affect their NHL rosters, whereas some of these other ones probably won't affect the NHL level roster. Only pretty much the minor league team. So let's take a closer look at some of these guys. Of course, Brian Gionta captained Team USA in the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympic Games. He captained both the Montreal Canadiens and the Buffalo Sabres during his time there. Obviously, he's a seasoned veteran. He's 39 years old. He's played over 1,000 games in the NHL. So we're talking a very seasoned veteran here that the Bruins picked up. He hasn't played in the NHL since last season when he played for Buffalo. And obviously he'll be an unrestricted free agent on July 1 of this year, should he decide to come back and play. Although I think he just joined the Bruins for one last shot at winning a Stanley Cup, and then I think he'll call it quits after this year. That's just my personal belief anyway. And of course, putting him on the Bruins adds another player with very strong leadership qualities to the Bruins. And I did watch the Bruins game tonight, and he did play tonight. Played very well, actually. He played on a line with he set up Krejci's hat trick goal. So I don't know if he was playing on a line with him or if he just happened to be out there with him. I wasn't watching line matchups closely. I was kind of working on some podcast stuff and watching the game at the same time. So, but I did see him out there, and what part of him I did see, he did play very, very well. So, all right, let's look at Chris Kelly. He was the captain of Team Canada in the 2018 Olympic Games. He has not played in the NHL since last season. He played for Ottawa last year. He too can become an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. And another player with a lot of playoff experience. He actually has a Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins back in 2011. He too has played not quite as many games as Gionta, but he well over 800 games in the NHL. And he'll be a nice depth signing, and he's also a good guy in the room. I can remember from the time that he was with the Bruins that he was spoke of very highly by the other players on the Bruins back at the time, and they really hated to lose him when they did. But it was a salary cap situation. They just didn't have room for him on the roster anymore. So he moved on to Ottawa, and then he's kind of bounced around since then. But he most recently did play for Team Canada. So, all right. And the last signing was one that we knew was coming. Mike Fisher announced back in January that he was going to attempt to come back. And obviously, he wasn't going to play anywhere else but Nashville. But he did retire after last season. He now comes back. And he signed just before the trade deadline, so he's eligible to play in the playoffs. He has yet to play his first game this season with the Predators, but I would expect that's going to be coming pretty soon. As we get closer to the playoffs, they're going to get him into a few games here before the regular season ends. Definitely, for sure. And, of course, he'll be an unrestricted free agent on July 1st, just like these other signings. And I know the Predators are very excited to have him back. So, all right. So that's it for February 25th. So let's move on to February 26th. There were 18 trades involving all the teams you see here. And, of course, you can't see the teams behind here because of my ugly mug right there in the corner. But obviously that's Calgary, and this is Pittsburgh here. So yeah, a lot of trades going on February 26th. And that was, in fact, trade deadline day. So let's take a look at the first one, shall we? Columbus got Ian Cole, defenseman. Ottawa gets forward Nick Mutry and a 2020 third-round pick. So obviously we're not going to spend a lot of time on this one because it's kind of a low-level trade, but the Blue Jackets basically added some depth to their blue line. This seemed to be an ongoing trend with all the trades. A lot of teams were adding defensemen. I know the Bruins, for example, obviously I follow them closely. They're my favorite team. They are now sitting with 8 NHL caliber defensemen on their roster. And other teams are doing the same thing because they saw what happened to Boston last year. They lost 2 of their defensemen in the last week of the regular season and then lost 2 more defensemen in the first 2 games of the opening round of the playoffs, and quite honestly, it actually cost them the series against Ottawa in the first round last year because they were playing with essentially only 2 of their top 6 defensemen that had been playing all year, and then they filled that in with a few AHL defensemen and a unproven rookie in Charlie McAvoy, who actually played very well for them, but it is what it is. You got to have strong defensemen. You got to have strong goaltending in order to survive in the playoffs. So this seems to be the trend that teams were adding defensemen during this trade deadline period, and this is exactly what Columbus did in this case. All right, so Ian Cole obviously played quite a few years, almost 400 games in the NHL. He's in his final year of a 3-year, $2.1 million contract, so it's good cap value. He will be an unrestricted free agent on July 1st if he doesn't resign. And he was a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins, 2 Stanley Cup winning teams, so he's definitely got plenty of playoff experience, and that'll come in handy for Columbus because that is something they are seriously lacking. Is a lot of playoff experience, but he's got almost 50 games of playoff experience in the last 2 years, so he'll be a valuable commodity in that sense. Now, the player going the other way, obviously Ottawa is going into a rebuilding situation. He'll be a restricted free agent on July 1st. He's currently playing in the AHL, but you can bet that Ottawa will be giving him a shot in training camp next fall to make the big team. Not sure he will be ready or not without a significant jump in development over the summer. So time will tell to see if that happens. Now, as far as both teams in this case, the trade added some depth to the Blue Jackets defense, which they'll need in the playoffs, and he is expected to be on the bottom pair. And then, of course, the pick is the best piece going to Ottawa in this case. Motte is expected to join Belleville in the AHL, and there's probably not much of a chance that he'll make it to the NHL anytime soon. But, yeah, that third-round pick that Ottawa gets is the prize piece in going the other way for that trade. All right, let's look at the next trade. Nashville gets Ryan Hartman, a forward, and a 2018 fifth-round pick. Chicago gets Victor Ejdsell, a 2018 first-round pick, and a 2018 fourth-round pick. All right, let's take a closer look at the players involved in this trade. Ryan Hartman is in his final year of a 3-year, $2.775 million contract. He could be a restricted free agent on July 1st if he's not re-signed. Hartman is a former first-round draft pick, 2013 entry draft. And the Chicago Blackhawks, looks on this trade is they've pretty much given up on him, or at least have lost patience in his development. It's kind of stalled over the past couple of seasons. Being a first round draft pick, you would expect someone that was drafted in the first round to progress at a better level than he has. He scored 31 points last season, and he only has 25 so far this season, which is a mild upgrade, but certainly not to where it needs to be. He's 23 years old. You would think that he's going to progress better, and maybe this change of scenery will do him some good in this case. And he should make it right to the NHL level right away. So he's not the kind of player that they're going to send down to the minor leagues by any stretch, but be interesting to see how he does in Nashville, to see if his career gets jump-started. All right, let's take a look at Victor Ejdsell. I'm assuming that's a silent J, but you folks from Sweden can probably help me out on that one. He's in his first year of a 2-year entry-level deal. He's currently playing in the Swedish Hockey League, and he's actually doing quite well over there. When I saw him and his stats and whatnot, and some of the stories about him, I was pretty excited, at least for Chicago in this case, because he looks like he's a pretty good prospect going the other way. As I said earlier, I like this trade for Chicago. They get 2 picks and a pretty good prospect for a guy whose career has apparently stalled. Hartman gets definitely a needed change of scenery, but Nashville is just as deep, if not deeper, than Chicago at the forward position. Even still, he can help them in the playoffs in a bottom six role this season. Edsel is a little-known prospect, but is performing well in the Swedish league. Getting him over to Chicago next season, at least for training camp, is definitely going to be a top priority. He could develop into a decent NHLer. And, of course, Hartman just adds some depth for Nashville, who definitely has stated and has shown that they're all in attempt to try to win the Cup after coming so close and yet so far away last year. So, and I definitely like Nashville coming out of the West for sure, given all the talent that they've got now. All right, let's look at trade number 3 between the Vancouver Canucks and the Vegas Golden Knights. Vancouver gets forward Brendan Leipsic, and Vegas gets defenseman Philip Holm. In the grand scheme of things, it's a very minor trade. That's why I didn't spend a whole lot of energy on this one. I threw up both players' cards up here, and as you can see, Leipsic has got 50 games of NHL experience to Holm's 1. Leipsic is a younger player than Holm, but it's just a straight-up 1-for-1. Vegas is adding a little bit of depth on D. Probably a player that they won't even use in the playoffs, but certainly will be there just in case. And then Leipsic is a player that Vancouver can add to their roster for use in future seasons. And probably Leipsic has the bigger upside going forward long term. So pretty minor trade in the grand scheme of things. All right, trade number 4. Winnipeg gets forward Paul Stastny with 50% of his salary being retained by St. Louis. St. Louis gets forward Erik Foley, a 2018 conditional first-round pick, and a 2020 conditional fourth-round pick. Now, as far as the conditions are concerned, the first-round pick becomes a 2019 first-round pick if Winnipeg wins the lottery, essentially. And the fourth-round pick, the Blues will get the pick if Foley doesn't re-sign by August 16th of 2019. So in this case, they would only get this pick if Foley doesn't re-sign. So pretty much the trade is Foley and the conditional first-round pick for Paul Stastny. And Stastny, 50% of the salary is retained by St. Louis in this case. Obviously, the prize in this trade is the Paul Stastny, and there's a lot of players on St. Louis that have been devastated by this deal. It reminds me a lot of last year when St. Louis got rid of Shattenkirk, indicating that St. Louis was in a sell mode, but then St. Louis went on to make the playoffs. So, you figure it out. Well, St. Louis is in it again this year, and they're right in the thick of things, and everybody on the team thought that they were in a buy mode or at least a push for a playoff mode, and then all of a sudden they trade away one of their better players. Kind of confused as to what the message that sends the players on the Blues, knowing that they're sending away one of their best players to another team right in the midst of a playoff run. So I can see where some of the players on St. Louis could be pretty miffed by this whole deal, because it sounds like Paul Stastny was fairly well liked on that team. But anyway, he's obviously a seasoned veteran. The guy can put up some points on the board, that's for sure. He's played 800 games plus in the NHL and has 600 plus points in the NHL. So he's in the last year of his 40-year, $28 million contract, and he can become an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. Now, obviously, that's the reason that St. Louis traded him, was to get something for him rather than losing him for nothing in the summer. So it sounds like Stastny was going to sign elsewhere anyway. So I can respect St. Louis for trying to get something for him in that case. But Stastny is expected to center the third line behind Mark Scheifele and Brian Little. Those are the top two centers on the Jets. And, of course, looking at the other player going the other way, Erik Foley is an unsigned prospect, a former third-round draft pick in the 2015 entry draft, and he's currently playing his third season in the NCAA, playing for Providence College. So Providence has put up some pretty decent prospects in recent years, and he's just simply the latest. So in the long run, I don't think Foley is going to ultimately become the player that Stastny was in his prime, but he could be a decent NHLer nonetheless down the road. All right, next trade. Columbus Blue Jackets get Ryan Kujawinski. Can't believe I said that right. And Arizona gets forward Jordan Motte. Two forwards switching hands here. Two American League forwards. Two guys that aren't expected to make the NHL. Very, very minor deal in the grand scheme of things. So let's move on to the next one. All right, trade number 6. Anaheim Ducks get forward Jason Chimera, and the Islanders get forward Chris Wagner. Both are NHL experienced players. And in the case of Jason Chimera, he's 38 years old. He's played forever in the league. I had a hard time getting his card to fit on the screen. As you can see, the font or the typeface is very, very small on his because he's had such a long career. This seems like he's played 40 years in the league, but he's been around a long time. So the Ducks are getting a seasoned veteran here, veteran left winger. He'll be in the bottom 6 for sure for the Ducks as they try to make a run for the playoffs. And the Islanders basically get a 12-year upgrade in terms of age, straight up. Wagner's a smaller player than Chimera, but he fits more the game that the Islanders are trying to play. They're a young team. They got some speed, and they need players that can play at that type of level for the Islanders, and Wagner should fit that bill nicely, or certainly will do it better than Jason Chimera. But this is definitely a 1-for-1 trade. No draft picks, no other stuff attached to this trade. So pretty straightforward trade in my mind. The Ducks are getting a guy that's on his way out of the league, and Wagner is a guy that does have some upside still. So I like the trade for the Islanders in this case. Kind of shows that the Islanders are a bit of a seller at this point, although they are trying to keep up in the Metro. They can still make the playoffs for sure. But Anaheim is definitely showing a little desperation here with this trade. So anyway, there it is. All right, next trade. Columbus gets forward Thomas Vanek. Vancouver gets forward Tyler Motte and forward UC Jokinen. Vanek obviously is the prize in this trade. A lot of experience, almost 1,000 games. He's scored a lot of points over the years. He's been a very, very good player for a long, long time. He's in his last year of his contract, and he can be an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. He's a former first-round draft pick, 5th overall. A good, serviceable player, but the big knock on Thomas Vanek is he tends to disappear. He'll be invisible some nights, and he'll be dominant the next. So if you like that kind of player, then there you go. But he should help, assuming he's engaged and really wants to win. He will help Columbus, particularly on the scoring side of things. But it'll be interesting to see if he can maintain that scoring level once the playoffs start. He doesn't have a whole lot of playoff experience. 63 games over as many years as he's played. That's really, in the grand scheme of things, not that much playoff experience. But we'll see. We'll see how he does. And players going the other way, Tyler Motte. He's in the second year of his 3-year entry-level contract. He's seen time both in the AHL and the NHL. He's expected to join the Blue Jackets and play in bottom 6 minutes to start. But he could end up playing in the AHL if he doesn't. This is actually a typo. He's not expected to join the Blue Jackets. He's expected to join the Canucks. Obviously, the Canucks aren't going anywhere this year, so he should end up playing for the Canucks right away. All right, and Jussi Jokinen is been around the league a long, long time. He's in his last year of his single-year $1 million contract. He'll be an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. I can't imagine he's going to be around the league very much longer. His numbers have been in steep decline over the past years. One of the curious things, though, with him is Vancouver is his fourth team this season. Yeah, he's played for Edmonton, LA, Columbus, and Vancouver all this season. And Vancouver is his ninth team overall. He spent a lot of years with the Carolina Hurricanes. I remember him quite well playing down here. And he's several years with the Panthers as well. But yeah, he's played for a lot of teams. He's kind of bounced around the league a lot. He's best known as being a shootout specialist. He's 36 for 92 lifetime in the shootout, a 39% career shootout score, which is actually pretty good. He has 36 shootout goals lifetime, and that's 11th all-time in the NHL since the shootout was enacted. But, as we all know, the shootout is useless in the playoffs. So if you can't use him in the playoffs, there's no point having him around, which is why they moved him on to the Canucks. Now, goals for both teams in this one. The Blue Jackets get a rental player who can help with scoring on the left side in Vanek. Tyler Motte is the better piece going to Vancouver, going the other way. At just 22, he can still develop into a decent NHL player. He's been the victim of playing for two teams in the Blackhawks and Blue Jackets with deep rosters limiting his playing time. He'll get a better opportunity for more playing time with the rebuilding Canucks. Jokinen at this point is almost finished with his NHL career. He'll likely will not be around after this season. I'll be surprised if he signs elsewhere next season. I just see him going back to Finland and playing maybe in the Finnish league for another year or two before he calls it quits for good. All right, trade number 8, Vegas gets Tomas Tatar. Detroit Red Wings get 2018 first-round pick and 2019 second-round pick and a 2021 third-round pick. So Vegas, when they were doing their expansion draft, made a lot of deals with a lot of teams to, take this player or not take that player, so on and so on. Well, they stockpiled a boatload of draft picks, and they've begun to spend them during this trade deadline period. And this was the biggest trade that they made. And I was actually surprised by this one. I didn't think that Detroit would give up Tomas Tatar. He's one of their cornerstone players. But Vegas gave up a lot to get him. So the first round pick is in 2018. Because of how good of a season that Vegas is having this year, it's quite likely that pick will be very, very late in the first round, probably 28 or later, or at least 26 or later, because 29, 30, and 31 will go, well, anyway. It'll be a late pick anyway. So it's, in all intents and purposes, a second-round pick. And then, of course, next year, Vegas gives up a second-round pick to them. And then in 2 years after that, they give up a third-round pick. So, yeah, Detroit gets their rebuild jump-started with all of these extra picks. So, kudos to them. But Vegas gets Tomas Tatar. And he actually has 3 more years left in his contract, which explains why that Vegas gave so much to get him, in that he has plenty of time left on his contract. Now, Detroit, as it is very tight against the cap. Their cap issues have been well documented. We've talked about it many times on the podcast. And giving up a player in Tatar, who they're paying $5.3 million per year for him, and for a guy that only scores 45 to 50 points, that is a bit of an overpaying for a player, I guess, if you want to just look at it for points for dollars. I guess I could see why that trade. So in the short term, Tatar goes to Vegas. Vegas gets another decent scorer that they can add to their roster on top of all the other decent scorers that they have. And he'll fit in somewhere in the second or third line. And that'll give Vegas a very strong top 3 lines for sure. They don't have a lot of top-end talent in Vegas, but they've just got a lot of really good, solid players, which is why they've done very well. They basically have it's a team of 4 second and third lines, whereas all the other teams have a first line, a second line, third line, fourth line. Vegas is like 4 second lines or 2 second lines and 2 third lines. So they're a very tough team to play against because there's any guy on that roster can beat you, which is why they've been so good. All right. So the goals for both teams: Vegas Golden Knights add a player in Tatar who can score and play with speed and skill on the third or second line. Tatar was tied for second on the Red Wings with 16 goals. Detroit loads up on draft picks to aid in their rebuild. At the same time, they give up a player whose point production has been declining slightly since a couple of seasons ago. And the question I have to ask is, did Vegas give up too much? Obviously, considering Tatar has 3 years left in his contract, maybe Detroit could have gotten more for him. You tell me. All right, let's move on to the next one. Trade number 9. Pretty straightforward, pretty minor trade in the grand scheme of things. Winnipeg Jets get defenseman Joe Morrow, so adding a little bit of depth on D for their playoff run. And in return, they give up a 2018 fourth-round pick to Montreal. Pretty straightforward here. Joe Morrow probably won't make the Winnipeg Jets starting lineup, but he will play. He will be a good 7th, 8th, 9th defenseman for Winnipeg, so that when kind of insurance for injuries is pretty much what we're looking at there. All right, trade number 10. Ottawa gets a 2019 7th-round draft pick. Calgary gets forward Nick Shore. This is another one of those players for picks. Calgary's adding some depth in a position that they don't have enough of. And, of course, Shore will be a restricted free agent on July 1st. So the Calgary Flames will be looking to get him re-signed over the summertime. And they really didn't give up a whole lot for him, so that's good for the Calgary Flames in this case. All right, trade number 11. Edmonton Oilers get Joey Dudek, or J.D. Dudek as he's known around the hockey world, and a 2019 third-round pick for Patrick Maroon. Maroon was a rumor among trades. I've heard all kinds of different teams that he was rumored to go to, the Bruins being one of them. And he ultimately does go to the Devils for a pick and a prospect, essentially, is what this is. Patrick Maroon, he's in the final year of his contract. He'll be unrestricted free agent, and he fills a need for playoff experience, size, and grit on the bottom 6 for the Devils. And J.D. Dudek is an unsigned college prospect, currently playing for Boston College in Hockey East. So he's a pretty decent prospect there. BC is a good producer of high-end college talent for sure. There's a lot. The list is a mile long of all the players that went to BC and went on to be stars in the NHL. So, all right. I guess that's it on that trade. Let's move on to trade number 12. Carolina Hurricanes get Greg McKegg. Pittsburgh Penguins get Josh Joris. These are essentially 2 minor league players changing hands. Really not any need to spend a whole lot of time on this one. Joris was up with the Hurricanes somewhat this season, as was McKegg, but both were sent down and have been playing in their minor league teams or minor league affiliates since then. So very, very minor trade. Let's move on. All right, trade number 13. Minnesota gets a 2019 5th-round pick, and it's the pick that they picked up from Washington in a previous trade.
and Montreal gets defenseman Mike Riley. Riley is a defenseman that can help Montreal right away. Montreal, as I stated in previous trades, is very light on D in their depth chart, and they need to rebuild their defense numbers for sure. And Mike Riley is a guy that can do that for him. He is only 24 years old, so he still has some upside. He's a fourth-round draft pick. He has 1 year left on his contract, so at least Montreal has a guy that they can use for at least the next year before they can move him or either decide to re-sign him or let him go into free agency. But anyway, minor trade for the most part in this case. All right, trade number 14, San Jose Sharks get Evander Kane. This is one of the bigger trades of the day. And Buffalo gets forward Danny O'Regan, a 2019 conditional first-round pick, and a 2020 conditional fourth-round pick. Now, the condition on the first-round pick is if the Sharks re-sign Kane, it becomes a 2019 first-round pick. If he leaves via free agency, it will be a second-round pick in 2019. And the other condition on the other pick is the Sharks actually have the option of keeping this pick, and if they do, the Sabres will get a 2020 third-rounder instead. So yeah, a couple of conditions on the draft picks, and actually none of the draft picks for this upcoming season, so I commend the Sharks on that one. They still, they get out of doing the 2018 pick, which they may have already traded away. That could be an explanation. I didn't look up that information. But anyway, so Danny O'Regan, a couple of picks for Evander Kane. And Evander Kane obviously will be an unrestricted free agent if he doesn't resign on July 1st. And he fills a need for speed and skill on top lines. He'll help fill a gap left by injured forwards Joe Thornton and Joel Ward. And I've watched a couple of Sharks games, not whole games, but parts of games. And Evander Kane is filling in on those top two lines. And he is already being productive there. In his first game, he had 2 assists, and I think he had more tonight. The Sharks played tonight, and he had even more. Playing very well for them right off the bat. And Danny O'Regan is in the final year of his 2-year contract. He'll be a restricted free agent on July 1st. And he's another decent prospect that Buffalo can use in their rebuild. Their rebuild process has been going on for a couple of seasons now, and this guy might fit in nicely with them as they try to rebuild their team. And an interesting nugget, too, is O'Regan is a former teammate of Sabres star forward Jack Eichel. They were teammates at Boston University back a few years ago. All right, we're getting there. Trade number 15, Colorado Avalanche get defenseman Ryan Graves, and New York Rangers get defenseman Chris Bigras. Very minor trade in the grand scheme of things. A couple of minor league players. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one. Just a trade of defensemen, and both players will be restricted free agents on July 1st if they don't re-sign with their team. All right, trade number 16, Tampa Bay Lightning. This is a big one. Get Ryan McDonough, defenseman, and JT Miller, a forward, from the New York Rangers for Vladislav Nemestikov, Libor Hayek, Brett Howden, 2018 first-round pick, and a 2019 conditional second-round pick. And that conditional pick becomes a first-round pick if the Lightning win the Stanley Cup in 2018 or 2019. So if the Tampa Bay Lightning win the Cup, which is a very good possibility because they took a defense core that was already one of the best in the league and made it even better by adding Ryan McDonough. JT Miller will definitely be able to help out on the forward lines. He definitely at least replaces Nemestikov on the forward lines. It's like adding some guy with some skill and some grit. But let's take a closer look at the players. But, you've got the Rangers really jump-started their rebuild with this one. In the short term, Tampa Bay wins huge by getting these 2 really good players. in the long term, the Rangers will do very, very well as well. All right, let's take a closer look. McDonough, of course, is the prize of this trade. He's in the 5th year of a 6-year contract, so he still has 1 full season left. He won't be going anywhere. He'll be staying right in Tampa Bay through next season. He adds depth to an already strong defense core in Tampa. He's not a pure rental. He has 1 more year after this one under contract. And he is currently injured, so he has yet to play his first game with Tampa Bay. But he is day-to-day, so he's expected back soon. But is a defenseman who can put up some pretty good numbers. He was quarterbacking the power play when he was with the Rangers. I'm not sure he'll do that with the Lightning because, they still have Victor Hedman there. But to put Hedman and McDonough back on D is going to make Tampa Bay a very, very, very difficult team to play with or play against. And JT Miller is in the 2nd year of his 2-year contract. He can become a restricted free agent on July 1st. So this is another player that Tampa Bay gets that they won't necessarily lose at the deadline or at the free agency. And just another player who can put the puck in the net and add some talent to Tampa Bay. Nemestikov is a player going to the Rangers, so to get those 2 really good players, neither of which Tampa will lose at the end of the season to free agency, they had to give up something on their NHL roster, and this is the player that they're losing. He's in the 2nd year of a 2-year contract. He'll be a restricted free agent on July 1st, so the Rangers do have the option to sign him, and he doesn't put up quite as much numbers as JT Miller, at least in recent years. So Miller is definitely an upgrade over Nemestikov, but Nemestikov he kind of plays the Rangers style of game. He's a very fast player. He can a lot of skating, a lot of skill, just not a lot of grit, where Miller can provide that sandpaper that Tampa Bay is going to need in the playoffs. So if I were to choose between 2 players, between Miller and Nemestikov, I would definitely want Miller over Nemestikov, even though Nemestikov and Miller are about the same age. But Miller's a bigger player. He's more productive. It's just all around better choice between the 2. Anyway, let's move on to the other pieces of this trade. Libor Hayek, he has a 3-year entry-level contract. Hasn't kicked in yet because he hasn't played. He's currently playing for Regina of the Western Hockey League, and he played for the Czech Republic in the World Juniors in December, scoring 8 points in 7 games. And he is essentially the defense prospect that is replacing Ryan McDonough, and he could develop into a pretty good one. He put up pretty good numbers wherever he went. He played very well in the World Juniors for the Czech Republic. I like this player for the Rangers. I think he'll be a good one. They definitely want to try to get him into development camp over the summer if the Rangers have one of those, and if they don't, definitely training camp in the fall. They want to get him in a Rangers uniform and at least get him playing so they can get a good look at him and then decide whether or not to sign him. But I expect, especially where I think this is his last season of eligibility in the Western Hockey League, at the very least, he'll be playing in the American League next year, if not, if he doesn't make the Rangers roster out of the gate. But he's a player that's almost NHL ready at this point. And then Brett Howden is the other player that the Rangers get. He also has an entry-level deal that's yet to begin. He's playing in Moose Jaw of the Western Hockey League. He also played in the World Juniors, but he played for Canada, scoring 7 points in 7 games for Canada. So he's another pretty decent prospect. He's a former first-round pick, 27th overall in 2016. And I think he will do very well for the Rangers going forward. Again, he may have one more year of Western Hockey League, but the Rangers will get him into training camp and get a good look at him before they send him back. And then Hayek, yeah, he is a former second-round pick. So 2 pretty good prospects as the pieces going to the Rangers. So Tampa Bay becomes a much deeper team with the addition of Miller and McDonough. Neither are rentals. McDonough has another year of contract after this year, and Miller will be a restricted free agent. This virtually ensures that the Lightning will be contenders next year as well, if not the year after. The Rangers, on the other hand, get a lot of nice pieces to jumpstart their rebuild. 2 high-end draft picks, a current good young NHLer, and 2 promising junior prospects are all nice pieces for the Rangers. There's no throw-in players in that trade. So in the short term, Tampa Bay wins huge. They really solidify their team, really make them a dangerous team, even look even better and more scary. And the Rangers, on the other hand, in the future are going to reap the benefits from all 5 pieces that they got in return. So this was probably one of the bigger trades of the day, and I think it's a good trade for both teams. Tampa Bay in the near term, the Rangers in the long term. This pretty much solidifies Tampa as probably the Cup favorite coming out of the regular season, heading into the playoffs, as much as I hate to say it. All right, trade number 17. We're almost done. Bruins get forward Tommy Wingels. Chicago Blackhawks get a 2019 conditional 5th-round pick. And that 5th-round pick will become a 4th-round pick if Boston advances past the first round of the playoffs this year, or if Wingels re-signs with the Bruins this summer. So obviously he'll become an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. It's a pretty low-end draft pick for a bottom 6 player. He was bottom 6 when he was with the Blackhawks. He'll be bottom 6 with the Bruins if he even plays. If all the Bruins are healthy, he may not even crack the starting lineup. He may be sitting up on the 9th floor. So, but he's a nice, decent. I've seen him play a couple of games already for the Bruins. He's a decent player. It's not going to be somebody you're going to form your team around by any stretch, but a good depth player to have. And if any Bruins get hurt, he can step right in and take over from there. So, a good trade for the Bruins in my mind. All right. Arizona Coyotes this is the final trade of the trade deadline day. Arizona Coyotes get forward Pierre-Cedric Labrie and defenseman Trevor Murphy. Nashville Predators get forward Tyler Gaudette and defenseman John Ramage. Why did I say Rob Ramage? I know there's a relation there. Okay, here are the 2 players that the Coyotes got. I put them both on here because they're 2 pretty minor players in the grand scheme of things. Labrie is a 31-year-old veteran. He's not going to be a NHL player by any stretch. He may get a few games here or there, but for the most part, this is an American Hockey League player. Trevor Murphy, on the other hand, he is just 22, has some upside. He's played mostly AHL and OHL to this point. He hasn't played yet in the NHL. He hasn't made his debut yet, but if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. He's probably he's put up pretty decent numbers in the levels he's played at, so he may get a shot with the Coyotes since he hasn't had a shot as of yet. In that, the Predators are a very deep team on defense, so that's probably why he hasn't gotten a true look at the NHL level. So he should get his NHL look next season with the Coyotes for sure. And the 2 players that the Predators got in exchange are a couple of minor league players as well. Tyler Gaudette, 24-year-old undrafted player. John Ramage, a 27-year-old. Drafted in the 4th round of the 2010 NHL entry draft. Never really developed into the player that they were hoping that they would get. And I don't know. This one is a couple of American Hockey League players for a guy who's definitely an American Hockey League player. And then Trevor Murphy, a pretty minor prospect, but could develop into an NHL player. So Murphy, I think, is the best of the 4 players in this 4-player trade. All right, so that's it. 18 trades on the 26th, 5 trades on the 25th. Overall, it was a very slow year this year in the trade deadline day. So there's that. All right, switching back to my other camera. Anyway, it was a pretty slow year this year, and I kind of half expected that when I saw all the trades going down in the several days leading up to the trade deadline. Once we got to the 26th, it was anticlimactic because all the big names were already either re-signed and told you're not changing teams, or already got traded before the trade deadline day. So a lot of the GMs were proactive this year, not waiting to the last minute to get their trades done. And that left, a very, very light day on trade deadline day. So I didn't get to take that day off. I wish I did. But at the same time, if I did take the day off and have only 18 trades to talk about when there's normally 30 or 40, it would have been a pretty disappointing day if I didn't work. So, but anyway, that's all the trades that happened on the 25th and the 26th. So hopefully that this video informed you. I know it went really, really long, but when you're talking about all the trades in one video, it's going to go long. I'll probably go ahead and break up this video into smaller chunks and find probably the 5 to 10 biggest trades out of this whole group of trades and do individual videos on each trade. So we'll have that coming up. And let me go back to the screen here. So in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be talking about, obviously, the individual trades that happen. As we go forward, we're going to kind of forget about those because everybody's getting ready for playoffs. So we've got playoff previews coming up. We've got, I want to do some videos on college hockey because the Hockey Nuts is not about just NHL. We talk about minor league teams. We talk about college teams. We even talk youth hockey sometimes. So that's the way our podcast has been over the past couple of years, and that's the way I want the YouTube channel to go. I don't want to talk just NHL. So, and we're heading into the postseason play in college hockey, so we're going to be doing some of the upcoming days off that I've got. Today was day 6 of an 8-day work week, so to speak. So I've got tomorrow and Saturday left to work to get me through, and then I've got Sunday off, although I do referee 3 games on Sunday, and then I work Monday, and then I think I have Tuesday off, and then I have a couple days off coming up. So with that little extra time off that I'll have, I'm going to go ahead and do some more videos talking college hockey. We're going to talk some NHL some more. Some playoff previews. We're going to start looking at some of the teams that are being eliminated from playoff contention, looking at what their outlook is for the future. We're going to do a lot of that. So stay tuned. We're going to have a lot coming up. And in the videos coming up, I'm also going to give you my thoughts and analysis on the trade deadline winners and losers from 2 different perspectives. Obviously, who the winners and losers are in the short term and who the winners and losers are in the long term. So I want to do that. That'll be coming in the coming days as well. And then we'll also continue with talking about the individual games that have been going on over the past couple of weeks. We've got some very busy days coming up in the month of March. The compact schedule is going to be hard to follow everything, but there's going to be a lot going on anyway. All right, so that's it. So until next time, obviously, if you learned something today, go ahead and click the like button. If you want to learn more or if you want to see more from our channel, certainly hit the subscribe button because every subscriber we add to the channel encourages me more and more to do more of these types of videos. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below on any of these trades. I'm always open to discussion. And until the next video, we'll catch you then. Talk to you later.